Have you ever felt someone standing right behind you, even when the room is empty? Emma felt that. Inside an abandoned house deep in the Louisiana marsh, she stood face to face with a girl in a white dress. A girl who looked alive. Until Emma noticed her feet weren't touching the floor. But the real horror wasn't the girl. It was the shadow behind her. A tall, distorted figure, stretching across the rotting floorboards, moving without making a sound, reaching for Emma as the door slammed shut on its own. Emma tried to scream, but the house swallowed every sound. And then the girl whispered, "He won't let me leave." That was the moment Emma realized. She was not just trapped in an abandoned house. She was trapped inside someone else's last night alive. Cypress Hollow was the kind of quiet, forgotten corner of rural Louisiana where time seemed to slow down, and sometimes even stop. The Spanish moss hung low from the towering cypress trees, swaying gently over narrow dirt roads that twisted like old scars across the swampy land. Most people who lived there knew every neighbor within 10 miles, and every neighbor knew every old rumor, every family secret, every whispered legend of the bayou. But there was one story, one no one dared to speak too loudly about. The story of the abandoned Lambert house. Sam Lambert had lived in Cypress Hollow all his life, though people said he was never truly part of the town. He was quiet, withdrawn, and preferred the company of his fishing boat and the slow-moving bayou rather than crowds or conversation. For years, Sam stayed alone in the weathered wooden cabin at Hollow Bend Road, a place his family had passed down for generations. Until one day, he vanished. No letter, no trace, no explanation. The town searched, of course, at least for a while. A few boats dragged the nearby waters, some men combed the woods, and the sheriff asked a few questions. But in a place like Cypress Hollow, where superstition ruled deeper than the law, people stopped the search sooner than they should have. They believed Sam had simply walked into the swamp and never walked back out. Others whispered something darker. They said Sam had been seeing things, shadows moving through the trees, strange lights over the marsh, and a woman's voice calling his name at night. A voice no one else could hear. But that was years ago. Over time, the memories faded like old photographs left in the sun. People moved on. The Lambert house sank deeper into ruin, its roof sagging, its porch collapsing, its windows dark and hollow like empty eyes staring out over the swamp. No one went near it anymore. Until the night Emma Carter returned to Cypress Hollow. Emma hadn't planned on coming back. She had left Louisiana when she was 20, determined never to look back at the place where she spent so many years trying to escape her past. But after her mother passed away, Emma inherited the small plot of land at the edge of town, and with it, a responsibility she couldn't ignore. She arrived late in the afternoon, driving down the old gravel road that led into Cypress Hollow. The air was thick and humid, the sky glowing a rusty orange as the sun began to sink behind the swamp. It felt exactly as she remembered, quiet, too quiet, as if the whole town was holding its breath. Emma parked beside the tiny house her mother once owned. The paint was peeling, the porch steps creaked under the slightest touch. Everything felt frozen in the past. She sighed, placed her bags down, and whispered, "I'm home." But the word didn't feel right. Not anymore. Inside, the house was dusty, dim, and heavy with memories she had spent years trying to forget. She opened a few windows, letting in the warm, sticky air. The silence wrapped around her like a blanket, thick, unmoving, unsettling. Her phone vibrated with a message. It was from her childhood friend, Mark Bennett, one of the few people she still trusted in Cypress Hollow. "Saw your car. I'll drop by later. You shouldn't stay there alone your first night back." She smiled faintly. Same old Mark, always protective, always cautious. She texted back, "I'll be fine. Just need some time to settle in." But even as she typed the words, Emma felt a strange chill, a feeling she couldn't quite explain. A feeling as if someone or something was watching her. It wasn't until the sun dipped below the trees that Emma remembered the old well behind the house. She had always been afraid of it as a child. Her mother told her never to go near it. "It's dangerous," she would say. "And besides, there are things in this world better left alone." Emma never understood what she meant. Tonight, she would begin to. As darkness settled, frogs croaked loudly across the marsh, and insects buzzed in the air like static. Emma stepped outside to take one last look at the property before going to bed. That's when she noticed it. A faint, flickering light, deep in the woods, right where the Lambert house stood. Emma narrowed her eyes, trying to make sense of it. Is someone out there? The light vanished, just like that. But the moment it disappeared, a low rustling echoed through the trees. It wasn't the wind. She knew that sound. This was different, slow, deliberate, like footsteps moving through the underbrush. Emma stepped back toward the porch. Her heartbeat quickened. "Hello." The rustling stopped. Silence swallowed the night. She took a shaky breath and turned to go inside, when a voice drifted from the woods. Soft, barely audible, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. "Emma." She froze. Her blood turned cold. No one in town should know she was here yet, except Mark. But the voice wasn't Mark's. It sounded older, rougher, like someone who hadn't spoken in a long, long time. Emma stared into the trees, her lips trembling. "Who's there?" No answer. Just the distant echo of the swamp, and the slow creaking of branches swaying in the dark. She rushed inside, slamming the door. Her breath shook, her hands trembled. For several minutes she stood motionless, listening, waiting, but the voice didn't return. Finally, she whispered, "I'm just tired. It's been a long day. I'm imagining things." But deep down, she knew she wasn't. Something had called her name. Something waiting in the darkness of Cypress Hollow. Something that should have stayed silent. And as Emma tried to fall asleep that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that her return to Louisiana wasn't a coincidence. It was an invitation. A pull from a story she thought she had escaped. A story tied to Sam Lambert, and the house that should have remained abandoned. Outside, the woods rustled again, and a whisper, so faint it almost wasn't real, drifted through the night. "You're home now." The next morning crawled into Cypress Hollow with a gray, heavy mist that clung to the trees like old memories refusing to fade. The swamp was quiet, too quiet, as if the night had drained all sound from the air. Emma Carter woke with a start, her heart still beating fast though she didn't remember dreaming. She sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. The house felt colder than it should have. Still. Unnaturally still. For a long moment, Emma simply listened. The old wooden walls creaked softly, settling from the night. A faint drip echoed somewhere in the kitchen. But besides that, nothing. And it was the nothing that frightened her. She brushed off the unease and headed to the front door. When she stepped outside, the morning fog was so thick she could hardly see the yard. And that was when she realized something strange. There were footprints. Fresh footprints. Leading from the edge of the woods, straight toward her porch. Emma's breath caught in her throat. No, that's not possible. The prints were faint, softened by the moisture, but still clear enough to make out. Bare feet, narrow, long, almost as if someone had walked barefoot across the cold, damp grass in the middle of the night. She stepped back, fear tightening her stomach. Someone was here. Her voice cracked. Or worse, something was here. Before her thoughts spiraled further, she heard the crunch of tires on gravel. A moment later, Mark Bennett's old pickup truck rolled into view. He stepped out with 2 cups of coffee in hand and that familiar, easy smile she remembered from childhood. But the smile faded the second he saw her face. "Emma, you look like you've seen a ghost." She swallowed hard. "Maybe I have." Mark raised an eyebrow but didn't push. They sat on the porch steps, steam drifting from the paper cups, while Emma told him everything, about the rustling in the trees, the whisper calling her name, the strange light near the Lambert house, and finally, the footprints. Mark listened quietly. Too quietly. When she finished, he exhaled slowly. "Look, Em, this place has a way of messing with your head. Especially after being gone for so long. You think I imagined it?" "No, I just think." He hesitated. "Cypress Hollow isn't like other towns. Strange things happen here. Always have." Emma stared at him. "What do you mean?" Mark glanced toward the line of trees swallowed by mist, his jaw tightening. "You remember Sam Lambert, right?" Of course she did. Everyone in town remembered Sam. "He wasn't crazy," Mark said. "People said he was, but he wasn't. He swore something followed him home from the swamp one night. Something he couldn't escape." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of something?" Mark lowered his voice. He said it looked like a woman, but not a living one. Emma's stomach dropped. "A woman?" "Yeah. Pale, thin, long black hair. Always standing at the edge of the woods. Watching." Emma closed her eyes. The voice from last night echoed in her mind. "Emma." Her hands trembled slightly. Mark continued, unaware of her rising dread. People stopped believing him. Thought he'd lost his mind. Then the night before he disappeared, he told the sheriff he heard her calling his name. Emma's breath caught. Calling his name? Mark nodded. Soft, like a whisper. Emma stared into the fog, her heartbeat quickening. That was exactly what she heard. Before she could speak, Mark gently touched her arm. "Em, you shouldn't stay out here alone. Not while you're still settling in. Come stay at my place for a few nights." She shook her head. "No. If I run now, I'll never stop running. I need to figure out what's going on." Mark sighed. "Then at least promise me you won't go near the Lambert house." Emma didn't answer. And that was answer enough. By afternoon, the mist had thinned, but the unease clinging to Emma's thoughts only grew heavier. She decided to clean the house, anything to keep her mind occupied. Dust filled the air as she swept, wiped, and opened cabinets that smelled of age and forgotten time. That was when she found it. A box. Old. Weathered. Hidden behind a loose board beneath her mother's bed. On top was a folded cloth, brittle with age. Beneath it, letters. At least a dozen of them, tied with a string. Emma hesitated, then slowly untied the knot. Every letter, every single one, was addressed to her mother, and signed, Sam Lambert. Her pulse quickened as she skimmed the first page. Sam wrote about strange dreams, shadows outside his window, a woman's silhouette in the trees. He begged her mother to believe him, to help him. The last letter made Emma's hands go cold. I can feel her getting closer. She whispers at night. She wants me to come back to the old place. If I follow her, I don't think I'll return. Emma's vision blurred for a moment. Why had her mother never told her any of this? Why hide the letters? And more importantly, why did Sam write her mother when he needed help? There was only one place that held the answers. The Lambert house. Emma folded the letters, slid them back into the box, and stood up. Her heart pounded in her chest, not from fear, but from something deeper. A pull, as if the house itself was calling to her. Outside, the sky had darkened again, thick clouds rolling in over the swamp. A storm was brewing, the kind Cypress Hollow was known for. Emma stepped onto the porch, the wind tugging at her hair. And then she heard it. Soft, distant, but unmistakable. A whisper carried through the air. Emma! She froze. Her throat tightened. The voice came from deep within the woods, from the direction of the Lambert house. The wind rose, carrying leaves across the yard. Thunder rumbled far away, and the whisper came again. Come home. Emma felt her legs moving before she made the decision, driven by instinct, by fear, by something she didn't understand. She stepped off the porch, into the grass, toward the trees. The storm crackled overhead. Mark's warning echoed in her mind. Promise me you won't go near the Lambert house. But she couldn't stop now. Something was waiting for her. Something tied to her mother, to Sam Lambert, and to the whisper calling her name. Emma crossed into the tree line. The woods swallowed her whole. The storm followed, and whatever waited in the darkness of Cypress Hollow finally knew she was coming. The woods of Cypress Hollow were never welcoming, even in daylight. But under the storm-darkened sky, they felt almost alive, pulsing with old secrets buried beneath roots and mud. Emma stepped carefully between the cypress knees rising like crooked fingers from the earth, each one slick with moss. Rain had not yet fallen, but the heavy air carried the electricity of a storm waiting to break. The deeper she went, the darker it became. The trees grew thicker, the air colder, the silence heavier. Emma swallowed hard. "This is a bad idea," she whispered. But some unseen pull, urged her forward. Every few steps, she felt it again, that faint, tingling sensation at the back of her neck, the unmistakable feeling of being watched. She stopped, listened. Nothing. And yet, Emma! Her blood ran cold. The whisper drifted through the trees, softer than the rustle of leaves, barely more than a breath. She spun around, searching the shadows. "Who's there?" Her voice trembled. "Show yourself." Only the swamp answered, with its slow, rhythmic breath. Emma forced herself to move again, pushing past low-hanging branches. The hair on her arms stood on end with every step. The trees seemed to close in tighter around her, as if guiding her, or trapping her. and then she saw it. A dark outline through the mist. The Lambert house, half collapsed, sinking into the earth, its windows black as empty sockets, its porch leaning dangerously to one side. Vines crawled up the rotting wood like veins, and the roof sagged beneath decades of neglect. Emma stopped at the edge of the clearing, her chest tightening. This was where Sam Lambert had lived his final days. This was where he had been haunted. This was where he had vanished. She took a shaky step forward. The wind picked up, howling through broken boards. The front door creaked open a few inches, as if inviting her inside. "Come home." The whisper brushed past her ear. Emma flinched and stumbled backward. "No, no, I'm not doing this." She grabbed her phone with trembling hands. "I'm calling Mark. I shouldn't be here alone." But when she unlocked the screen, there was no signal. Not even one bar. "Of course," she muttered through clenched teeth. The woods swallowed every trace of reception. She looked back at the house, then at the dark path behind her, then back at the house again. The storm rumbled above. A raindrop landed on her hand. Then another. She exhaled shakily. "I'll just look inside. 5 minutes. Then I'm leaving." She stepped onto the broken porch. The boards groaned beneath her weight. Another gust of wind pushed the door open farther, revealing a dark hallway filled with shadows and dust. Emma lifted her phone to use as a flashlight and stepped inside. The smell hit her first: old wood, mildew, and something else, something metallic. The living room was coated in a thick layer of dust. Furniture lay scattered, overturned, broken. A collapsed bookshelf leaned against the wall. Cobwebs draped across the ceiling like torn curtains. What happened here? Every step stirred dust into the air, making it feel like the house was breathing. She moved slowly, her phone's dim light cutting through the dark. On the floor, she noticed deep scratch marks on the wooden boards. Long, jagged lines, like something had clawed at the ground. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears. "Sam, what were you running from?" She took another step. Crack. Emma gasped as the floor gave slightly beneath her foot. She pulled back, breath shaking. The house wanted her out, but the whispers wanted her in. "Emma!" The voice drifted down the hallway behind her. She spun around, terror tightening around her chest like a fist. "Sam." Her voice came out as barely more than a breath. "Is that you?" Silence. Emma swallowed and forced herself toward the hallway. Her phone's light trembled across the walls, revealing peeling wallpaper, framed pictures coated in dust, and dark stains she didn't want to look at too closely. One door at the end of the hall stood slightly open. A faint glow flickered beneath it. Emma froze. No, that wasn't there before. She took a step toward the door. Then another. The glow flickered softly, like candlelight. Her fingers shook as she pushed the door open. Inside was Sam Lambert's old bedroom, and on the floor, lit by the pale, flickering glow, was a circle of candles. Fresh candles, unburned wax, recently lit. Emma's breath hitched. Someone's been here. The room looked untouched compared to the rest of the house, as if preserved by someone, or something. The bed was still made. A small wooden desk sat against the wall. Papers were scattered across it. She approached the desk, drawn by a strange urgency. On top of the papers was a notebook. Sam's handwriting covered every page. She flipped to the last entry. She's here again. She stands at the edge of the woods, calling my name. I can feel her pulling me toward the well. Emma's eyes widened. The well. Her mother's warning echoed in her head. Never go near that well, Emma. She turned the page. I think she wants someone else now. Someone connected to this place. Someone she's been waiting for. Emma's stomach dropped. Her hands trembled violently now. Thunder cracked overhead, shaking the walls. The candles flickered. The room darkened. And behind her, a soft breath. Slow, cold, right at her ear. Emma. Her body froze. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't move. Something stood behind her. Something tall. Something thin. Something that smelled of damp earth and old, rotting water. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "What do you want?" The whisper answered, "You." Emma spun around, but there was nothing there. Nothing, except a cold, lingering presence drifting toward the open doorway. And then, from outside, a loud crack echoed through the trees. Emma rushed to the window. The storm had fully broken now. Rain tore through the clearing. Lightning flashed, illuminating the backyard, and the silhouette of a woman standing beside the old well. Emma's heart plummeted. She couldn't see her face. She couldn't see her features. Only a long, thin figure, with hair hanging down like wet seaweed, unmoving in the rain, staring up at the house. Lightning flashed again, and the woman turned her head directly toward Emma. Emma stumbled backward. No, no, no. A violent pounding suddenly struck the front door. Bang, bang, bang. "Emma, open up." Mark's voice. She raced down the hallway, nearly slipping on the warped boards. She yanked the door open. Mark stood soaked in the rain, panic etched across his face. "Emma, what the hell are you doing out here?" "The sheriff said the storm's turning dangerous. You need to get out now." She grabbed his arm, gasping for breath. "Mark, she's here." Her voice cracked. "The woman. Sam's woman. I saw her." Mark's expression drained of color. "Where?" Emma pointed with a trembling hand toward the backyard. "There. By the well." Mark hesitated, just for a second, just long enough to tell her he believed her, and long enough to tell her he was terrified too. Lightning flashed again. The woman was gone, but the well remained, silent, waiting. Mark swallowed hard. "Emma, listen to me." His voice shook. "We need to leave. Right now." But as Emma stared into the storm, into the place where the apparition had stood, she felt something deep inside her shift. A terrible realization. The woman wasn't trying to scare her. She wasn't trying to warn her. She was calling her back to something her mother had kept hidden, something Sam had feared. Something buried beneath Cypress Hollow. Emma stepped off the porch. "Emma, wait." She whispered to herself, or maybe to something else. "I have to know the truth." And she walked toward the well. The storm raged. The woods watched, and the darkness of Cypress Hollow began to stir. Rain hammered the clearing as Emma stepped slowly toward the old well. Mud sucked at her boots, and wind whipped through the trees like a warning. Mark caught up to her, grabbing her arm. "Emma, stop, please." His voice barely rose above the storm. "This isn't safe. You don't know what's out here." She tried to pull away. "I do know. I saw her. She was right here, Mark. And she's connected to Sam, to my mother, to everything. That doesn't mean you walk straight into danger." Lightning tore across the sky, illuminating the cypress trees like twisted skeletons. Emma stared toward the well, its stones slick with rain, its opening shrouded in darkness. The air around it felt colder, heavier, like the gravity of the earth bent inward. Mark followed her gaze and whispered, "My God." They approached slowly. Emma's breath fogged in the icy air. Mark's hand trembled on her shoulder. The storm roared, but around the well, everything was eerily still. Emma swallowed, feeling her heartbeat pounding in her ears. "Mark, my mother warned me about this well my whole life." "She warned everyone," Mark replied. Nobody went near it after the stories about the Lambert family started spreading. Another flash of lightning. Another wave of icy wind. Emma leaned over the edge, shining her phone's light downward. At first, nothing. Just darkness. Then, something flickered. A glimmer of light. Faint. Blue. Mark stiffened. "Did you see that?" Emma nodded slowly. "I think something's down there." She looked around for something, anything, to lower inside. A rusted metal hook lay in the mud, still attached to an old rope, half-rotted but intact enough to use. Mark grabbed it before she could. "No, I'll do it." Emma stared at him, rain dripping down her face. "Mark." "Emma, you're shaking. Just let me look." He tied the rope around a broken fence post and lowered the hook slowly into the well. The rope creaked under the weight of the falling line. The storm crackled above. Emma held her breath. Mark leaned closer. Almost there. Almost. The rope twitched. Mark froze. "Did you feel that?" Emma nodded. Another twitch. Then a violent jerk. The rope snapped tight. "Mark, pull it up." He strained against the weight. Something's caught on it. Emma grabbed the rope too. Together they hauled upward, mud splashing under their feet. The storm boomed above them, louder, angrier, as if something in the sky was warning them not to continue. The hook emerged. Hanging from it was a small, waterlogged wooden box. Emma gasped. "Oh my God!" The box was old, decades old, sealed with a rusted metal clasp. The wood was swollen from years of dampness, its carvings faded, but one symbol remained. A circle, with a single vertical slash through it. Emma's hands trembled as she touched it. "I've seen this before." Her voice faltered. "In Sam's letters." Mark frowned. "In the letters to your mom?" "Yes." He drew this symbol over and over. In the margins. On the last page. As if he was trying to warn her. Lightning flashed again. But this time, the light didn't vanish instantly. Something white stood in the trees. Emma's breath caught in her throat. "Mark, don't move." He followed her stare. A woman stood just beyond the tree-line. Tall, motionless, pale as faded moonlight. Her wet hair dripped down her face, black as night. Her dress clung to her thin frame like soaked burial cloth. She didn't walk toward them. She didn't even sway in the wind. She simply stood, staring. Emma took a step back, clutching the box to her chest. Mark whispered, "That's her." The woman lifted her head slightly, as if acknowledging him. Emma's voice cracked. "What do you want from me?" Lightning flashed, and the woman vanished. Mark grabbed Emma's hand. "We're leaving now." She nodded, breath shaking. They ran through the woods, stumbling over thick roots as the storm's fury intensified. The wind clawed at their clothes, branches slapped against their arms and legs. The darkness pressed in around them like a living thing. Emma didn't dare look behind her. Not until they burst out of the trees and onto her mother's property. Only then did she stop, panting, soaked, shaking. Mark doubled over, hands on his knees. What was that? Who was she? Emma held the waterlogged box tightly, feeling its cold weight. "I don't know." Her voice trembled. "But I think this box is the reason she appeared." Mark glanced at it. "Are you going to open it?" Emma hesitated. What if it contained something dangerous? What if it held whatever took Sam? "I'll open it inside, not out here." They went into the house. The storm pounded against the roof, louder than before, as if trying to break through the walls. Emma set the box on the kitchen table. The metal clasp was rusted shut. Mark handed her a small pocket knife. "Be careful." She forced the clasp open. The lid creaked as she lifted it. Inside was a stack of papers, and beneath that, a small, cracked photograph. Emma picked up the photo with trembling fingers. It showed a young woman standing by the well. Her face was blurry, but her dress, her hair, her shape. Emma whispered, "It's her." Mark leaned closer. "She looks just like the woman in the woods." Emma flipped the photograph over. On the back, written in faint, smeared ink, was a date, 1964, and a name, Eleanor Lambert. Emma's heart dropped. "Lambert." She whispered the name like a ghost from the past. "She's Sam's mother." Mark stiffened. What happened to her? Emma picked up the stack of papers. They were brittle with age, the ink faded but still readable. She skimmed the first page and gasped. They thought she drowned. The second page. But her body was never found. The third. Sam believed she was taken by something in the well. Then came the final page. Emma's hands shook violently as she read aloud. "If the well calls to someone, it means Eleanor has chosen them to replace her." Mark grabbed her shoulder. "Emma, stop reading." But she kept going. "She will follow the chosen one. First in whispers, then in shadows, then in flesh." The last line made Emma's blood freeze. She has chosen Emma Carter. Mark's breath hitched. "What did you just say?" Emma looked up, pale as bone. "It's my name. Mark, it says my name." The house creaked. The storm howled. And from somewhere deep inside the walls, a soft, wet whisper, "Emma." The lights flickered. The air turned icy. Emma stumbled back, clutching the papers. Mark reached for her, but stopped when he saw her expression shift from fear to something else. Recognition. Awful. Sudden. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Mark, this handwriting. What about it?" Emma lifted the last page. This wasn't written by Sam. Mark blinked. "Then who?" Emma swallowed. "This is my mother's handwriting." The realization hit like a knife. Her mother knew. She had always known. And she had lied. Outside, thunder cracked, and the front door slammed open on its own. Cold wind swept through the house. Mark grabbed Emma's arm. "We need to go. Right now." But Emma didn't move. She stared toward the open doorway, frozen, because standing in the doorway, dripping wet, eyes hollow, skin pale as the moon, was Eleanor Lambert. Her voice slid through the air like water through stone. "Emma, come with me." Emma stumbled backward, breath choking in her chest. Mark shouted, "Emma, run." But Emma whispered, "She knows my name." The candles flickered, the walls groaned, the storm roared, and the woman stepped inside. The sun never fully rose that morning. It hid behind a thick layer of gray clouds, thick enough to make the whole of Cypress Hollow feel like it was holding its breath. Emma sat on the edge of the guest bed in Mrs. Harlow's farmhouse, still trembling from the night before. Her clothes smelled of wet leaves and rotten wood. Her hair was tangled from running through the marsh. But none of that compared to what she felt inside. She had stared into the pale, ghostly eyes of the girl in the abandoned house. And she had seen the dark silhouette, the man standing behind her, the way his shadow seemed wrong, misshapen, reaching for her through time. Emma knew she couldn't sleep. She couldn't eat. She couldn't pretend nothing had happened. She needed answers. And Mrs. Harlow, one of the oldest residents of this part of Louisiana, was her only chance of finding them. "Emma," the old woman finally said, voice trembling but kind, "tell me, slowly, everything you saw." Emma didn't want to speak. Her throat felt tight, like the walls of the abandoned house were still pressing in on her. But she forced herself to tell the truth. Every detail. The girl in the white dress, the locked door, the whispers, the scratching sounds behind the walls, the cold fingers brushing her neck, and the man, his shadow long and unnatural, his presence suffocating. When she finished, the old woman closed her eyes. Emma waited, terrified she had said too much, or that she would be dismissed as someone imagining shadows in the dark. But Mrs. Harlow didn't laugh, didn't doubt her, didn't ask if Emma was sure she wasn't dreaming. No, the woman simply whispered, "It's happening again." Emma froze. Again. Her voice cracked. "What do you mean again?" Mrs. Harlow opened a drawer beside her rocking chair and pulled out a faded photograph. The edges were bent, the color almost gone. But Emma could still make out two girls, one dark-haired, one blonde, standing in front of the very same house that had nearly swallowed her alive. The blonde girl looked exactly like the apparition Emma saw. "That," Mrs. Harlow said softly, "is Lily Mae Bennett. She lived in that house when I was about your age." Emma felt a cold wave creep up her spine. "She's the girl, the one I saw. But how?" "She looked dead," the old woman finished quietly. "Because she is." Emma's breath hitched. Mrs. Harlow leaned forward. "That house wasn't always abandoned. Lily lived there with her father, a harsh, violent man. Folks around here tried to intervene, but back in those days, people didn't ask too many questions in the countryside. They kept to themselves. Emma swallowed hard. The old woman continued. One night, must be close to 30 years ago now, there was screaming coming from that house. Neighbors heard Lily crying, glass breaking, furniture crashing. Then, silence. Emma stared at the photograph, at Lily's smile. So young, so alive. A girl who had no idea she would one day be a ghost trapped in her own home. What happened? Emma whispered. Mrs. Harlow's voice lowered. They found the father lying on the kitchen floor. He had fallen, or perhaps someone pushed him in the struggle. The official report said it was an accident. But Lily was gone, disappeared without a trace. Emma felt her chest tighten. So she died that night. Mrs. Harlow didn't answer immediately. She looked out the window, toward the direction of the marsh, the silhouette of the abandoned house just barely visible through the trees. No body was found, no remains, just absence. Emma felt a chill. And the father? She asked softly. Mrs. Harlow hesitated. He was alive when they found him. Barely. But the way he spoke in those last minutes. She closed her eyes. It was nonsense. Ranting about Lily being pulled away. About something in the walls. Something in the house that wouldn't let her go. Emma felt her skin crawl. What do you mean something in the walls? Mrs. Harlow didn't answer. Instead, she placed the photograph in Emma's hands. You saw Lily because she wanted to be seen. Her voice cracked. And you saw the man behind her because he never left. Emma's heart dropped. You mean her father's ghost? No. The old woman's hand tightened over Emma's. What's in that house now is not her father. Not anymore. Emma felt the room grow colder. Then what is it? Mrs. Harlow whispered. A memory twisted into something else. A remnant of violence so strong it became a thing of its own. The house kept it. It feeds on fear, on pain, and Lily is trapped there. Emma's eyes stung. She asked me for help. I didn't understand her words, but I felt it. She's trying to escape, isn't she? Mrs. Harlow nodded slowly. But she can't. Not without someone to witness what truly happened. That house keeps replaying her last night. Over and over. Anyone who enters becomes part of it. Emma shuddered as the memory washed over her. The cold breath behind her. The girl whispering. The man's shadow stretching across the floor. The door slamming shut. But I escaped, Emma whispered. She let me escape. Mrs. Harlow stared into her eyes. She chose you. Emma's breath trembled. Chosen for what? Mrs. Harlow stood with difficulty, walked toward the shelf, and pulled out a small wooden box. She placed it gently on Emma's lap. This was found in the house years ago. It belonged to Lily. Inside is her last message, something she wrote the day before she vanished. Emma hesitated, then opened the box. Inside was a folded, yellowed piece of paper. Shaky handwriting. A message written by a girl who knew she was not safe. Emma read aloud. If someone finds this, please don't let him hurt me again. Please help me leave this house. Emma felt tears burn her eyes. Mrs. Harlow whispered, "Emma, you must take this back to her. Lily needs someone living to acknowledge her truth. Only then can the house release her spirit." Emma wiped her face. "And the thing in the house? What happens when I go back?" Mrs. Harlow looked at her sadly. "It will try to stop you. It has tried before with others. But you saw Lily. You heard her. That means you can cross the threshold without becoming lost." Emma took a deep breath. She felt fear, but something stronger rose beneath it. The same feeling she had in the moment Lily reached for her in the dark. "Courage. I'll go," she said softly. Mrs. Harlow placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Then remember this. Lily is not trying to harm you, but the house is." Emma returned to the abandoned house just as dusk fell. The door creaked open on its own. The air was colder inside. Still, waiting, she stepped over the threshold, holding Lily's final note. "Lily," she whispered, "I'm here. I know what happened, and I'm not leaving until you're free." A soft glow appeared in the hall. The girl in the white dress, Lily. Her expression was no longer pleading. It was relieved, grateful. Behind her, the darkness swelled, twisting, stretching, the shape of a man dissolving into something monstrous. Emma held out the note. "This is yours, Lily. Your voice, your truth. You're not alone anymore." The house groaned, the walls shuddering, the dark figure recoiling as if burned. Lily touched the note, and the paper burst into a gentle white light. A wind swept through the house. The shadow screamed, a horrible, hollow sound, and then shattered like smoke torn apart by a storm. Lily's face softened. Her lips moved. "Thank you." And then, as quickly as she had appeared, she faded. The house grew still, warm, empty. Finally, truly empty. Emma stood in the silence, breathing hard, knowing she had witnessed the last chapter of a girl's unfinished life. Then she whispered into the quiet, "You're free, Lily." And the darkness never answered again.